Britain does high streets rather well. Saturday mornings with market stalls spilling onto the pavement. The butcher who knows your order. The post office queue that moves slowly because everybody stops for a chat. Brass bands in the park. Fish and chips wrapped in paper. The kind of towns that feel like they have always been there and always will be. But some of those towns are disappearing. Not dramatically, not overnight, not in the way that makes the evening news. They are still on the map. You can still drive there. The roads lead in and the houses still stand. But something essential has gone. The work, the people. The reason the place existed in the first place. Quietly removed while nobody made a fuss. I have gone through census records, council reports, and testimonies from people who watched it happen. These are 10 towns that quietly disappeared. Now, before we dive in, if you find this helpful, tap that subscribe button. You will not want to miss what is coming next. Let us begin with a town in County Durham that existed because of steel and stopped existing when the steel stopped. Consett sits high on the edge of the Pennines, roughly 14 miles southwest of Newcastle upon Tyne. In 1841, it was a village of 145 people. Nothing much. A few cottages on a hillside. Then somebody discovered coking coal and iron ore beneath the ground and limestone nearby. Those three ingredients were all you needed for blast furnaces. Within a decade, Consett was a boom town. By the 1880s, the steelworks at Consett had become the largest steel plate factory in the world. The company owned 2,700 workers' cottages. It ran its own infirmary. It employed 6,000 men at its peak in the 1960s. The cooling towers and chimneys loomed over every terraced street, and above all of it hung a permanent pall of red dust, iron oxide from the steel-making process. It settled on roofs. It settled on washing lines. It turned the sky above Consett, a colour that no other town in England could claim. People said you could always tell a Consett man by the colour of his shirt collar. The steel produced here built Blackpool Tower. It built Britain's nuclear submarines. It built warships that helped win 2 world wars. In 1979, the work still turned a profit. Continental producers received subsidies that Consett never enjoyed and were still less competitive. None of that mattered. In 1980, British Steel closed Consett with the loss of 3,700 jobs. The Save Consett Steel campaign produced a poster that read simply, "Do you want to live in a ghost town?" Within months, unemployment hit 36%, 3 times the national average. The population dropped from approximately 39,000 to 25,000 as people left to find work that no longer existed locally. The red dust cleared from the sky within weeks. Locals said the town looked wrong without it. Felt wrong. The air was clean for the first time in 140 years, and it felt like something had died. Today, the site where men made steel for submarines is a Tesco and a Morrison's. Housing estates cover the rest. A few pubs have taken names that remember what was lost. The Company, the Works, Company Row. Consett is now largely a dormitory town. People live there and drive to Newcastle or Durham for work. The wages are lower, the pride is harder to find. 40 years after the closure, 19% of Consett's population still lives in areas classified as deprived. Travelling south through County Durham, we reach another kind of erasure. Easington Colliery sits on the Durham coast, overlooking the North Sea. The pit here employed over 2,000 men at its peak. The colliery housing spread in terraced rows around the mine like rings around a stone dropped in water. Everybody knew everybody. The pit was the clock that set the rhythm of the village. Shifts began. Shifts ended. The cage went down and came back up. In 1993, the colliery closed. It was part of a wave of closures that swept through the Durham coalfield and left nothing standing. But what happened next in Easington was different. The council demolished the housing, not because it was damaged, not because it was dangerous, because nobody wanted to buy it. Entire streets were bulldozed under the housing market renewal program. Seaside Lane, parts of the numbered streets where families had lived for 3 and 4 generations, where grandfathers had walked to the same pit their fathers walked to, flattened and grassed over. You can walk through Easington Colliery today and cross the footprint of streets that no longer exist. The ground is level, the grass is green. There is nothing to tell you that a row of houses stood here last century. The map remembers, the ground does not. Residents who stayed describe the feeling of watching their neighbours' homes knocked down around them. The film Billy Elliot was set here. The real Easington was grimmer than the film allowed. Now we come to a village that tells this story with a precision that is almost unbearable. Grimethorpe in South Yorkshire. In 1831, a historian named Joseph Hunter described it as a few dwellings near an ancient mill. The population was 87. Then in 1894 they sank a colliery and everything changed. By the 1930s, Grimethorpe was a proper village, a high street full of shops, a co-op, butchers, greengrocers, 2 fish and chip shops, a cinema, churches and chapels, a working men's club, allotment gardens, a recreation ground with a bandstand, and the Grimethorpe Colliery Band, founded in 1917, which became one of the finest brass bands in the world. 44% of the village listed their occupation as miner. The coal board owned the houses. It provided the leisure facilities. It provided the training and the jobs. The village did not just depend on the pit. The village was the pit. In 1993, Grimethorpe Colliery closed. It had made £1 million profit that year and employed 1,200 men. It was closed anyway. A man named Terry who worked there put it plainly. Nowadays, that would be seen as a great business. 6,000 workers lost their jobs between 1985 and 1995 across Grimethorpe and its merged collieries. Within a year, the European Union declared Grimethorpe the poorest village in Britain. Unemployment climbed above 50%. Between 1993 and 2001, 1,917 residents simply left. Houses were boarded up, vandalized, demolished. Crime spiraled. Estates were overrun with drugs. Elsie Smith, whose husband Brian had been a horn player in the colliery band, remembered the miners' strike a decade earlier. She said, "We got £7.23 a week to live on. We were wiped out." The film Brassed Off was shot in Grimethorpe. Locals say the real story was worse than anything the film showed. The village suffered another blow in 2013 when the clerk of the parish council was jailed for a fraud that left the community £1.3 million in debt, and yet the band survived. The Grimethorpe Colliery Band played at the 2012 London Olympics opening ceremony. It played at the BBC Proms and the BAFTA Awards. It won 16 brass in Consett championships. The band endures. Danny Gillespie, who worked in the pit for more than 30 years, put it simply. The government destroyed the village, but it bounced back because of the community and the people. Today, the site of Grimethorpe Colliery is an industrial park. The largest unit belongs to ASOS, the online fashion retailer, a distribution warehouse where men once dug coal, fast fashion where there used to be a pit cage. It is not the same, and everyone who lives there knows it. Coal and steel built these places. When the coal and steel left, so did everything else. But not every town that disappeared lost an industry. Some lost something harder to name. They lost the reason anyone would come. Rhyl on the north coast of Wales was once known as the playground of North Wales, a Victorian resort town with a pier that opened in 1867 at a cost of £15,000. It was the first pier in North Wales and stretched over 2,300 feet to accommodate steamers and excursion boats. By the middle of the 20th century, Rhyl was thriving. Guest houses on every street, amusement arcades along the front, fun fairs, donkey rides. Factory workers from Liverpool and Manchester and the Midlands brought their families here every summer. The train carried 150,000 passengers to Rhyl annually as early as 1855. It was the place you went when you could finally afford a holiday. Then cheap flights to Spain happened. The tourists stopped coming. The guest houses could not fill their rooms. Owners converted holiday accommodation into houses of multiple occupation. Bedsits, essentially. Rented cheaply to people with nowhere else to go. Rhyl became a magnet, not because it had services for vulnerable people, but because the housing was cheap. The spiral began. Fewer visitors meant fewer shops. Fewer shops meant less to attract visitors. The guest houses became bedsits. The bedsits became poverty. In 2008, Rhyl West was named the most deprived ward in Wales. In 2019, it topped the list again. In November 2025, the Welsh Index of Multiple Deprivation named Rhyl West 2, the most deprived neighbourhood in Wales for the second time in 6 years. 4 Rhyl neighbourhoods now sit in Wales's top 10 most deprived. The area around the High Street and seafront has been classified as an area of deep-rooted deprivation, meaning it has remained in the top 50 most deprived in Wales for every single publication over the past 20 years. The gap in healthy life expectancy for men between the most and least deprived areas of Denbighshire is 12 years. That is the widest gap in all of Wales. A community group called Brighter Futures that works in the heart of Rhyl West posted their response to the latest figures. It is heartbreaking and honestly infuriating to see our community ranked 1st, 5th, 9th and 10th for deprivation. The same issues keep coming back because the deep-rooted deprivation in our town is never properly addressed. Over £100 million has been invested in Rhyl over the past decade. New sea defences, a new promenade, a children's play area with 55 play features. The Pavilion Theatre has been modernised. New affordable homes have been built. None of it has been enough to shift the numbers. The town is still fading. The people who live there can see it. If Rhyl represents the slow death of the British seaside holiday, then Jaywick in Essex represents something even more bitter. In 1928, an entrepreneur named Frank Stedman bought salt marshes and fields on the Essex coast and built cheap holiday chalets for working-class Londoners. It was a generous idea. Affordable escape from the smoke and the slums. Families came in their thousands through the 1930s. Children paddled. Parents sat in deck chairs. The sea air did what sea air was supposed to do. Then the war came. Then the housing shortage came after it. And the people who were supposed to stay for a week stayed forever. The chalets were never designed for permanent habitation. No proper foundations, no insulation, no mains drainage in parts. But there was nowhere else to go. Post-war Britain had nowhere to put its people, and Jaywick absorbed them without complaint. Jaywick has been named the most deprived neighbourhood in England 4 consecutive times, in 2010, 2015, 2019 and 2025. The United Nations Special Rapporteur for Extreme Poverty visited in 2018. The headmistress of the local primary school said when you go to certain parts of it, you are quite shocked that you are in England. 62% of working-age residents were claiming benefits. 40% were unable to work due to disability or long-term illness. Butlins down the road closed in 1983 and took the remaining local employment with it. In 2018, an image of Jaywick appeared in a Donald Trump campaign advert as an example of societal failure. Except it was not America. It was Essex. 60 miles from London. Residents in the nearby Tudor estate asked Royal Mail to remove the word Jaywick from their postal address. They preferred to call themselves West Clacton. Bungalows in the older part of the village sell for around £20,000. A place designed to give the poor a holiday became the place where the poor are trapped. That is the cruelest irony in English housing. Rhyl and Jaywick disappeared because people stopped visiting. But what happens when a town is built from scratch, purpose-designed, government-funded, meant to solve a housing crisis, and it still does not work? What if the town itself is the problem? In 1961, the government designated Skelmersdale in Lancashire a new town. It would absorb Liverpool's overspill population. Families from the clearance of inner-city slums would be rehoused in modern purpose-built estates. Central planning, clean lines, roundabouts instead of crossroads, pedestrian underpasses instead of pavements. The population rose from around 10,000 to over 40,000 within 2 decades. It was efficient, it was modern, and the planners forgot to build a town centre. There is no high street in Skelmersdale, no square, no natural place where people gather and bump into each other. The Concourse shopping centre, built in the 1970s, was the substitute. It has been largely demolished. Its replacement struggles. The road system has no traffic lights at all. Every junction is a roundabout. This is fine if you have a car. Many residents do not. Public transport is chronically underfunded. The town sits between Liverpool and Wigan, but residents describe feeling completely cut off. Skelmersdale carries a stigma locally. People shorten it to Skem, and the name itself has become a punchline. Multiple areas rank in the most deprived 10% nationally. Youth unemployment runs high. The promised factories and light industry came and then left for cheaper locations. What remains is a town designed to function, but which forgot to become a place. You cannot build community without somewhere to gather. Skelmersdale proved that with mathematical precision. From a town that never had a centre, we travelled to one that had the most famous centre in the world. Shildon in County Durham is the birthplace of the railways. In 1825, the Stockton and Darlington Railway began here. Timothy Hackworth built his engines in Shildon's workshops. The wagon works that grew from those beginnings employed over 2,500 people at its peak. The entire town existed because of the railway. It was the first place in the world where the railway age took physical form. Iron tracks, steam engines, the future starting from a small town in Durham. In 1984, the wagon works closed. 2,500 jobs disappeared from a town of 13,000 people. The high street began to empty. Young people left for Darlington or further. In 2004, the Locomotion Museum opened on the site. It houses the National Railway Collection. It is an excellent museum. It does not replace an economy. Shildon gave the world railways. Now it has a museum about railways. House prices sit well below the national average. Town centre vacancy rates are among the highest in County Durham. The population has declined to approximately 10,000. The town that started the Industrial Revolution is slowly becoming a monument to it. These towns were supposed to work. One was built from nothing. The other built the modern world. Neither survived contact with economics. But the slowest disappearances are the ones still happening. Towns fading in real time while we watch. In the early 19th century, Merthyr Tydfil was the iron capital of the world. The Dowlais ironworks, Cyfarthfa, Penydarren and Plymouth were 4 great ironworks that made Merthyr the largest town in Wales. By 1831, its population exceeded that of Cardiff, Swansea and Newport combined. In 1831, workers in Merthyr raised a red flag for the first time in British history during the Merthyr Rising. People died for the right to be treated as more than fuel for the furnaces. This was not a small town. This was not a backwater. This was the beating heart of the Industrial Revolution. The ironworks closed through the late 19th century and across the 20th century. Dowlais ended steelmaking in 1930 and shut completely in 1987. The Hoover factory, which had provided steady employment since 1948, closed in 2009, shedding 337 jobs. What replaced heavy industry was mostly nothing. Multiple areas in Merthyr rank in the most deprived 10% in Wales. Life expectancy for men in the poorest parts falls well below the Welsh average. The town centre has vacancy rates that have been chronically high for decades. This long period of economic change represents a sharp decline. Seaforthford Castle, the grand home of the Crochet ironmasters, is now a museum and park. It sits above the town like a monument to the wealth that built it and then left. Merthyr Tydfil once outranked Cardiff in size and importance. Now its residents travel to Cardiff for work, for shopping, for hospital appointments, for ambition. The distance between what Merthyr was and what Merthyr is represents one of the longest falls in British history. Further north and deeper into the Welsh mountains, we reach Blaenau Festiniog in Gwynedd. This town once roofed the world. The slate quarries of northwest Wales produced roofing material for the British Empire and every country the empire traded with. At its peak, the population of Blaenau Festiniog grew to approximately 12,000, sustained entirely by the quarries and the narrow-gauge railways that carried the slate to the ports. Mountains were carved open. Caverns were blasted deep underground. The landscape was transformed on a scale that still startles anyone who sees it for the first time. Then cheaper roofing alternatives arrived, concrete tiles and synthetic materials. The quarries scaled back and closed one by one. The young left for Bangor, for Cardiff, for England. The population has fallen to around 5,000. In 2021, UNESCO awarded World Heritage status to the slate landscape of northwest Wales. It was both an honour and an elegy. The world now protects the evidence of what is gone. Blaenau Festiniog sits among its own industrial archaeology. Vast quarry terraces step up the mountainsides. Mountains of slate waste rise in blue-grey pyramids. Caverns extend for miles underground. Zip World operates adventure tourism in the former quarries. It employs people locally, but the work is seasonal. It rains here more than almost anywhere else in Britain, over 100 inches a year. House prices sit among the lowest in Wales. The proportion of Welsh speakers remains high. The cultural identity is strong, but the economy is not. Standing in Blaenau Festiniog, you are surrounded by the evidence of enormous effort. Generations of men went into those mountains and brought them out piece by piece. The slate they cut sits on rooftops across 5 continents. The town they left behind sits quietly in the rain, surrounded by the proof of what it achieved, waiting for something to replace it. We end at the bottom of a peninsula in Cumbria. Barrow in Furness is the largest town in the county. The A590 leads in and leads out. There is no passing through Barrow. You only go there on purpose. And what happens in Barrow, behind high-security fencing at the BAE System shipyard, is the construction of Britain's nuclear submarines, Astute class, Dreadnought class. These are the weapons that form the backbone of the country's defence. Roughly 10,000 people work at the yard. It is the overwhelmingly dominant employer. And yet Barrow is declining. Recent data from the Office for National Statistics recorded Barrow in Furness as having the largest percentage population decline of any town in England. Young people leave. The high street hollows out. Health indicators sit below the national average. Life expectancy for men is among the lowest in Cumbria. Housing is among the cheapest in England. Multiple deprivation indicators flag the town in red. Barrow builds the submarines that protect the nation. It is essential to national security. It is also quietly disappearing. The disconnect between what Barrow does for the country and what the country does for Barrow is not discussed in Parliament. It does not make the evening news. The town sits at the end of its peninsula, building weapons of extraordinary power, while its own high street closes shop by shop. and its population shrinks year by year. These towns are on the map. You can drive to every single one of them. The roads are there. The houses are still standing. What is missing is harder to spot from a car window. Purpose. Work. The reason a place existed in the first place. These places are not ruins. They are not abandoned. They are occupied and fading at the same time, which is worse. If you live in one of these towns, or if you know of another that has quietly disappeared while no one was paying attention, leave it in the comments. The voices of people who actually live with this matter more than any government report. These stories are real. The data is documented. The decline is ongoing. And in most cases, the people who live there are still waiting for someone to notice. Please watch the video appearing on your screen next, and do not forget to subscribe to Cottage Dreams.